Hello everyone, this is Vishwas and welcome back to our YouTube channel Front End Devs. This is fourth video of our React 19 series and as a part of today's video, we will understand React 19 form actions. Until React 18, we need to handle form submission manually. That means we have a form element or a form component, and inside that form component, we could have multiple input elements. It could be a input element for username, password, then we can have the drop down selection. And once all those done, we have a submit button to submit our form to the server. And on this form element, we have a props or attribute called onSubmit. Whenever we click on submit or login button, it will triggers our onSubmit props and it will call handle submit method. And then this handle submit method will takes event object as a parameter. First, we need to handle the default behavior of the browser. That means we need to handle the event.prevent default to avoid the submission of the HTTP request. And after that, we can read the input element values either by using event.target or we can use some state variables to read those values of either username, password, and get them into the handle submit function. We can have the state logic or we can use the use rep. Once we get form data, we will validate that and then we are using that data for further processing. And this is how we are handling form until React 18. Now let's understand how exactly we are handling form in React 18 with the help of one simple example. To understand the handling form manual way, I have created very simple example. This is my app component, and in app component, we have a form element here. And inside that, we have two input elements. The first one is username, where we have the label, and below we have the input element. And similarly, we have a label for password, and then we have a input for password here. Below that, we have a submit button. And I created a couple of state here. One is for username and one is for password. And whenever my username changes, I am updating the latest input value in my state variable. And now we will understand how exactly we can use the form submission. To handle the form submission, first we will create one handle submit method. The method will be very simple. We have a handle submit method. It will take event object as a parameter. First, we need to do the event.prevent default to avoid the default submission of the HTTP browser request. And we simply take those two input elements here. The first one is username and then password. And this handle submit, we need to add on our form element. That means we have the form element, it will have on submit props, and on that on submit prop, we will trigger on submit handler function when we click on this submit button. Hope you are clear with this implementation. First, we need to add on submit prop. Then we need to create the on submit method. First, we need to handle the event.prevent default. And in this scenario, we need to manage the state and get those two input value in your handle submit. And now here we can add our respective logic. Here we can add the logic for validation, like username and password should be valid or those should not be empty. And if those validations are passed, that means we have a valid username and password, then we can submit the form. And we also need to clear our values. For clear, again, I need to use the set username and set password method with value as a blank, something like this. Set password will be empty, set username will be empty. Let's save the changes, and if you go to the browser, you will see working of our form submission in action. I'm using Vite here for the implementation, and if you look at our page, we have the username, password, submit button, and on click of this submit button, our on submit action should trigger, and it should show our username and password in the console. Let me just give the name as Vishwas here, and I will use password as a test. And when I click on submit, value gets submitted. I have the username as a Vishwas and password as a test, and I have valid input. That means I'm not using any validation, and input values also get cleared. Those gets cleared due to I need to explicitly set those two empty values. This is the way to handle the form until React 18, and we can continue doing that. Nothing wrong with it. We can continue using the manual way of form submission in React 19 as well. But if you go with React 19, there is much better or simplified approach, and that is form actions. Now let's understand the form action with the help of example, and we will see how exactly form action simplified our form submission a lot with React 19. Let's move to the VS Code, and we will work on the same example and continue working with form actions now. To work with form actions, we should have React version 19 plus. And if you go to the package.json here, right, I'm already using the React version 19, and we are good to use form actions here. When we are going with form actions, we don't require on submit props anymore. Instead of on submit prop, we will use the action prop, and this action prop is not provided by the React. It is the existing attribute of the form element, and we are using it from long time. Like if you are working or worked with any of the non-React project where we are using the HTML, and in the backend we are using any backend technology, in the action value we are providing some URL of the backend file, so that when we click on the submit button, this action will be triggered and all the data will be sent to the URL provided here for further processing. But when we are working with React, we are working on single page application, and we can't pass the some backend URL here, right? So React override this action attribute, and instead of using some server URL, we can use the function as a value to action props. Here we are using handle submit function, and we will continue using that. And now handling the form with React 19 form action is very simple. We don't require any state to manage the data here. So we will remove that. Let me also remove the import from top. And we don't require value prop here as well as this on change method. So it's simplifying our code a lot. Let me save these changes. Also, we don't require event.prevent default anymore. That is already handled by the form actions, and we don't need to explicitly use it. Here, instead of event, we are getting form data as an object. And this form data contain all the information about our input elements. Now to access those input values, we can just use the constant here. I'm using the constant username, and we need to use the form data dot get username here. Username means the name that I have provided to my input element. If you go down and look for the name of my input element, it is username. And for password, I'm using name as a password. And both I can access now here. We also don't need to reset our input manually, and that is automatically handled by the form action. And here the things are simplified. This form data object contain all the details of our input elements. In the previous case, we need to manage the state, we need to use the onChange event, and we need to read those values by using event.target. But all those things are handled by the form data automatically, and we have everything available as a one object. We just need to make sure that each and every input element should have name attribute. And whatever value we are using here, that value should be used to get that data from your form data object. Hope you are clear with that. Now let's save the changes, and if you go to the browser, our functionality should work as expected. Let me clear this, and if I type Vishwas here and then I type any new password and click on submit, you should get username and password here, and we will see our form input gets reset. And all those things are handled by form actions for us. That means we don't need to construct this form data. We don't need to manage any unnecessary state. We don't need to handle the event.prevent default. We don't need to manually clear the user input when form is successfully submitted. We just need to focus on adding the name attribute for each of your form element, and then form data do everything for us. And this is how React form action simplifies the form submission for us. Now we have required form data here, and we can work on next thing. That means we can validate our data here, and if data is validated successfully, that the data can be sent to the server, and once the response is written, we can return that response back to the JSX. Something like this. First, let me work on error. I will create one error variable here, and initially I will set that as a empty. And now I will check length of my username and password. If my username and password length is equal to 0, then I need to set that error message to all the fields are required. And I will simply return that error message from here. But if we have valid username and password, then we can return our username, then we can return the password, and we can also return the success message, successfully submitted. Let me give comma here, and we can use identity operator. We don't require this console.log because that is not reachable now. And now we can return anything from this function. Because this function is no more work as a handle submit function for us, we are not handling the form here. Rather, this function works as a form action for us. We created a function here, and we are passing that function as a value to our action. Now we have handled the validation successfully, we handle the return case, and we can return anything from this function. But how exactly we can retrieve those values back to our JSX? That means we have written something from here, but if you look at this function, it is set as a value to our action props, and we don't have any way to retrieve those values or return values back here. So how exactly we can set the error or success message somewhere in the JSX? And for that, React provide us the special hook, and that hook is called useActionState. Now let's understand the useActionState hook and how exactly it will help us to simplify the form handling, and how exactly we can receive those return values and use them in the JSX. To use action state hook, we need to import it from React. So first, let me import it. It is use action state. It is imported from the React, and then we need to use it below, same as the other hooks. And this hook is introduced in React 19 only. As we know that React actions are introduced in React 19, so this hook is also responsible for handling the React actions or the form actions in better way. So it is part of React 19. If you are using the older version, then this hook is not supported. Now let me add this hook after our handle submit action, and here we will use that hook. Let me keep these things empty for now. And this hook is basically taking two arguments. The first argument is the action that we created. Here we have created our action and we need to pass that action as a first argument to our use action state hook. Then this hook is responsible for handling the form state. So we will require the initial state. This initial state could be override by our action, or when our component initially loaded, the first time action is not executed, and till that time the initial state is required to render our initial JSX. Let me go with simple empty array for now. We can set the initial state based on our requirement. In that case, we can set the error to empty or success to empty, but I think we are good for now. Use action state takes the two arguments. The first one is the action function, and the second one is the initial state. And now, same as a use state, it will return three different values. Use state is return two value. The first one is state, and the second is the function to update the state. But in case of use action state, we have three return values. Those are written as an array, so we can easily destructure those here. The first value will be a new state. We can give any name of your choice. I'm going with the state. You can give any name. We can also go with the form state or any name of your choice. Then second will be action and the third one will be pending. The first one is state, and that state is written by this use action state after handling our actions. That means this is the latest state we have, and for now let me give the name as a form state so we can understand them in better way. The second one is action. React take our action as a input, enhance it, and return us the new action. Let me give name of this action as a form action. And then we have third value, that is pending, which will indicate whether our form is being submitted or not. It is acts as a loading state, and we can set the loading spinner or any of the loading text until form is being submitted. Hope you are clear with all the three values. Now this action is written by use state action. So instead of using our own action, we need to use the action written by this hook to our action props. And now below that, we can use this form state. Let me go below, and above our submit button, I can add some JSX here. The first is when I have a pending state, I can add the submitting text. Then when I have the error state, then I can add the error message in the red. And then if I have the success, right? Let me just go with the success. I'm not looking for the username and password for now. I'm using the GitHub Copilot. So it's suggesting me those options. But for now, let just go with the success message. If I have the success message, then I will show that message in the green. Let's save the changes. And now if you go to the browser and click on the submit, we are getting some error message. And the error message is form data.get is not a function in handle submit. Let me understand the error. We are getting the error in our handle submit function, and it's saying that form data.get is not a function. To understand the error, yeah, the error is simple. Like when we are directly using our handle submit value to the action, we can directly pass form data as a argument here. But when we are using the form action which is written by the useActionState hook, we need to pass, or this form data is accepted as a second argument. The first argument will be the previous state, and the form data will be accepted as a second argument. This previous state is not needed for us, but we need to give that, and I'm using underscore here to explicitly denote that we are not using it. And hopefully now our changes should work. Let me go to the browser again, and when I click on the submit, you will see the error message here. We are showing the error message when we have username or password as a blank. And this is how we are using the use action state or form action in general to handle the React 19 forms. Now let me add some value here, and we will also look for the success message. When I click on submit, now we had both the values. We got the successful message here. But if you notice one thing, after success or after error, right? If I only have Vishwas here, and when I click on submit, we will see we are getting the required error message, but our previous values are also getting cleared. And that is default behavior of React 19 form actions. It is automatically clearing the input. And if you want to retain the input, we required some additional logic. We will understand that logic. But first, let's understand the pending state as well. If you look at our form, the form is not having any asynchronous operation, right? We are just having the handle submit action, and it just checking whether we have a valid username and password, and it executed quickly. But let me add some delay here. Like if our form is successful, then I can add the wait here, and let me set the promise of 2 seconds here, so that we can understand the meaning of pending value as well. Here, await is not allowed because we need to convert our action into async, and that is perfectly fine. Both sync and async actions are allowed with form actions. Let me convert the action into async action and save the changes. And if you go to the browser and add valid details, let me add Vishwas here and give some test name. And now when I click on submit, you will see we are seeing the submitting here for a couple of seconds, and then we will get the successful message. That's how we are also handling the loading state. And that is the meaning of third value written by use action state. We don't need to manage loading state anymore in your component or in your forms. And this is the beauty of using the use action state hook. Hope you are clear with it. This hook is basically taking the two values. The first one is the action that we created. It will take the initial state. It will return the three values. The first one is new state. Then it will return the action function, which is enhanced on top of our action, and it will return the pending state. Then we need to use this particular action which is written by the use action state hook to our action prop. And also when we go to the top, we need to pass form data as a second parameter here. The first parameter will be the previous state. And then below in the JSX, we can manage your pending, error, or success state as per the requirement. Hope you are clear with all the details. Now let's also work on last point. That is when we are clicking on submit button, our input values are gets cleared. And if you want to retain those values, that is simple. When I submit the form successfully, if we clear the values, that is absolutely fine. But when I type something, and if I don't type second value and click on submit, the entire form get reset. And at least in this case, I need to avoid resetting those values. Those values should get pre-populated, and to achieve that, we will require some small changes. The first important thing, when we are returning data from our action, we need to return form values as well. That means when we are returning the error here, we also need to return the username and password. And in case of success, I don't require those, right? So I will remove those in case of success. If my data gets cleared, that is absolutely fine. But when there is an error case, that data should be written. And now I'm getting those value back. That means those values I can access in the JSX. And here I need to set one more property. And that property will be default value. In the default value, I'm getting the form state here, and then I'm getting the username. If that is present, I will set that. Otherwise, I will set it to the empty value. And same I need to do for password. We need to set the default value here, and then if it is available, set it. Otherwise, set it to the empty value. Let's save the changes, and hopefully our value retention should work now. When I type Vishwas here and directly click on submit, now our values are retained. At least Vishwas is there, and when I type something, in this case, our form is valid now, and when I click on submit, it is taking some time to submit the form. Form is successfully submitted, and now our value are cleared. And that is absolutely fine. If you want to retain those values on success as well, we just need to return those values in the success case as well. Hope you are clear with how exactly we can return those values with form actions. That's all for today's video. I will push today's implementation code to the GitHub and share the link in the video description. I think that's all for this video. Finally, if you are enjoying my content, please like it. You can comment me if you need any help on specific topic. Please share with your friends so that it will reach to more people, and you can subscribe to my channel so that you will get the latest video alerts. Thank you for watching, and see you in next one. Till now, thank you. Bye.